Guys, recording for the third time. All right, good morning, everybody. This is Staff Sergeant Rose, Sergeant Piper. I always do that to you. Sergeant Span. And this is episode 3 of The Rabbit Hole. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about something a little bit more controversial with a lot of people, because everybody has their own opinions. And I think that bringing us 3 together will kind of help us. We'll see our 3 opinions, and hopefully we don't offend anybody or hurt anybody's feelings. But if we do, well, it happens.
Sorry.
Yeah. But hopefully everybody gets over it. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about, misconceptions and stigmas along with military service. So I just kind of want to open this up and say that one of the stigmas is that mustaches are ugly. That is a lie. I make this mustache look real good. So, but don't laugh at me, Piper. I see you.
Does your wife second that?
No, she hates it. To be honest, I hate it. Like, I hate this thing. But like I said last episode, someone challenged me, so I'm gonna just stick it out until the end. So hopefully we don't go another 45 days or however long this thing runs. So I guess I kind of just want to open it up, and I'm gonna kind of I didn't talk to you guys about this one, but I just thought of it. One of the first stigmas that I hear every single time that I talk to somebody is, "Oh, I can't do that because I'm not in good enough shape." Like I think this is probably like a huge misconception about just joining the military in general, is that you have to be in really good shape. What do you guys tell people when you hear them say that?
So we actually we had was it the podcast? The Daily Dose Show, when he interviews the basic training individuals and stuff, or random individuals from across the military. They interviewed 2 drill sergeants that were over there. And they said, like, no, as long as you can pass the OPAT, which is like any human being can pass an OPAT.
Yeah.
As long as you can do that, their job at basic training for that 10-week course, or the 9 weeks of actual training, and the 10th week is just you prepping to graduate, they'll get you to pass that test.
Yep.
The hardest part is not physical. It's mental. It's getting over the fact that, in life, if things are too challenging, people want to give up. They throw their hands up and walk away. When in actuality, like, it is on us as leaders to get people to be able to pass. So while you are accountable for your own actions, we're there to make sure that you overcome this adversity. So it's more mental than physical, and that's kind of the hang up that I've seen.
Yeah. What about you, Sergeant Span? What do you usually tell people?
Same thing. Just that it's designed to get you into shape, not for you to show up in shape. So
yeah. So actually, this is like a real story. I think that a lot of people, probably you two, probably joined when you were in good shape. I joined 2 years out of high school, not doing any athletics. And I was just working and not working out. Like, I was just working, and then I'd get home and I would do whatever I did. It generally involved eating out or whatever. So I was like 240 pounds when I joined the military. I was like super obese. I have some pictures. I was going to bring them up, and I was going to like share them on the screen, but they're a little embarrassing. Go to my Facebook if you want to look at those. But yeah, so I had some, so I was pretty big. And I was actually over the height and weight limits or whatever to join. I ran like an 8-minute mile or 8:30-minute mile or something like that, and that was as fast as I could run. So I was not in shape. And then by the time I'd left basic training, like you said, it's all a mental thing. So I was mentally strong, but just not physically, or I wasn't like working out or whatever. So by the time I left basic training, I was 180 pounds and was running like, mid 14s on a 2 mile. So pretty pretty good transition, because I was not in any kind of shape. So that's what I tell people generally when they say that I have to be in really good shape. I had to do a step test to get into the military. Like I had to,
A step test.
yeah. So it's like a beep test. Every beep you have to step up and then
Oh,
step. Dude, that was the hardest test I think I've ever taken. Being part of the military. So you definitely don't have to be in shape. You just have to be mentally strong enough to get yourself in shape once you get there. And I think that's like a pretty big reason for people not even wanting to sit down and talk to a recruiter, because they don't think they're in good enough shape. Well, you don't really have to be in that good of shape, because the drill sergeants are going to get you there. And I think that was a really good part of Sergeant Daly's thing that they brought up, is
yeah.
that is that part of it. So now we'll get into kind of a little bit more of the I guess the controversial ones. They're not really super controversial. This one isn't. So
So before we get into that, like
yeah,
super disclaimer, apart from the disclaimer you already put out, is like these are the controversies and stigmas that we've seen physically, like personally have seen while we're actually doing recruiting operations.
yeah, yep. So yeah, this is stuff that we've heard, and this is like, these are real world examples. These aren't just what we think people think of us. This is what I've heard. I've talked to some other recruiters, what they've heard. So the first one that I kind of want to get into is, I mean, outside of that is if I join the Army, I'm going to deploy. I have my own experience with this, but I'll let you guys go ahead and chime in on this, whoever wants to.
Go for it, Span.
So I've deployed twice. Got another mobilization, two mobilizations, one in the States and one outside of the States.
And this is in 20
Every
years.
time it was, in 20 years. And not even in 20 years, in the last 12 years since I've been in the Army Reserves. And 3 of those were volunteered for. Like, I chose to do it. I raised my hand. I said, hey, send me. I mean, we have guys in our office that have been in, 6+ years and have never gone anywhere outside of the United States. That wasn't a regular active duty station. So is it a possibility? Of course. My recruiter told me back in 1999 when I first joined, we just kicked Iraq's butt, so you're not going into war anytime soon. And 18 months later, 9/11 happened, and we were at war. Even then, when I joined right before the war, and I got out right after the war started. So, and even then I didn't deploy. I went to Korea. I did my 4 years. I got out of the Army, and it wasn't until after I got out of the Army that I ended up deploying. So.
Yeah, and that's for me. I've been in 8 years, actually. I think, yeah, literally about 8 years and 1 month, almost to the day. I've only deployed once, and that was at my last duty station when I was stationed at Fort Bragg with the BFSB. Well, it's different now; it's a EMIB now. But I got the call, and I volunteered to go. As I mentioned before, I could have just said no, but I feel like enough people that actively serve, and this is all like theoretical. Again, this is down the rabbit hole, right? There's enough people that want to go on deployment it's not a mandatory thing. At least on active duty. Reserve might be different because you actually activate a whole unit, right?
Yeah, so it depends. The reserves has a cycle just like active duty, and then they also have a mission set. So the cycles, long story short, is that most of the time it's voluntary, because there are enough people that want to go. On occasion, the number of individuals or the mission set that is required makes it a non-voluntary. I mean, we say non-voluntary, but you join the Army, right? So, I mean, really you volunteered for it. But, for the purpose of this conversation, it's not an active choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's as well. Like you said you deployed twice, right, Span?
Yes. Yep.
And that's in 20 years. I've deployed once in 8 years. And Rose, have you deployed?
Nope. So I've been in 12 years almost now, and haven't deployed. I've tried. I've put my name in the bucket for 3 deployments. The first one, I had just got to my section, and I was doing really good in the section, and they decided that they didn't want to send me. They didn't want to let me go. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. I just got here. I was a young E4, kind of a little bit of a hard charger, but they ended up just not wanting me to go. So, okay, so I tried again about 6 months later. Same result. They said, we don't want you to go, because not at this point I had got promoted to a sergeant, and I was leading the section. So they were like, we can't really have you leave. So again, I was denied. And then my third time I was actually selected. I was getting ready to go. I just got to Colorado, and then so I went through the courses, did all the training, was getting ready to leave, and then they were like 2 days before they'd cut off funding. That's when the furlough had started. Not the furlough, when they started like laying off all the federal contractors and like froze the budget and did all that stuff. Yeah. What year was that? 2014, I think. Somewhere around there.
I thought that was more recent.
So they've done it a couple times, but I mean, yeah. It was around 2014 when this happened to me. And I was 2 days before I was getting ready to leave, and they were like, hey, by the way, your orders are canceled, deleted. So I had like packed up my house, sent my family home. We were ready to go. We were prepared for this. And then they were like, hey, by the way, you're not leaving. And we had already turned in our house and everything. So it just ended up being one of those things, it wasn't like a bitter taste, because we ended up getting it handled anyways. Like that's one good thing about the military housing is that, we were off the list, but we got right back on it and got a house quickly thereafter. So it wasn't like a bad experience. It just kind of was a bummer because I was ready to go. I did all the training. I was like amped up, ready to leave. And then just, they're like, hey, by the way, you're not going. So, that's like and that's over 12 years. So like we have almost 30 years of experience here.
40. 8 and 12 is 20.
You're right. 40. Jeez.
But we're talking about the average between the three of us. It's right. One deployment every 10 years, the average?
15 or so, like 12, at least 12 and a half years. I mean, I don't know. I'm not good at math.
So I would probably say rough guesstimates about 10 years per deployment. But then what's your initial contract if you decided you wanted to serve for the benefits of being able to get out and pursue a career? Right. The average time is 3 to 4, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 3
so
to 4.
Your odds of getting a deployment on 3 to 4 years, even if you want it.
But like, let's not joke here. We're not here to say that people aren't going to deploy, right? Like that's not our job either. We're in the Army. Our job is to fight and win the nation's wars. So if something never did happen, there's obviously a good chance that you're going to deploy, but just because you join the Army doesn't mean you're going to deploy. And I think that's what we're trying to say here. It's not that we're trying to say that you're going to deploy if you join the Army, or you're not going to deploy to the Army, or if you join the Army. Like you could, or you could not. But
it's not a guarantee.
Exactly. Just because you join the Army does not mean that you are going to deploy. And then that will lead that into the next one. The next big common misconception is that if you go to war, you're going to die. Like, so yeah, there's a chance that you could go to get a deployment, right? Like, but what if you do get a deployment? That doesn't mean that you're going to die, or that you're, and I'll let you guys take it because I have my thoughts, and I'll just see what you guys say, and we'll see where that goes. So
I just want to keep it simple. There are plenty of numbers out there to show that over the course of the war, if you're more likely to die at war or something else. In 2017, let's talk about now versus 2002. In 2017, more people died from lightning strikes than combat-related deaths. Plain and simple. Go ahead, Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I mean, we're all still here. Rosie didn't get to deploy, but we're all still here relative, right? The span, I work with you day in and day out. I don't see any kind of even emotional distress when it comes to any kind of deployment-related symptoms, right? So people often confuse, like, if it's not death they're worried about, it's also the PTSD factor, which is a whole nother subject we can go down a rabbit hole about. But yeah, I get it. That's how we came up with the name of the show. But I mean, PTSD is your own ability and body's process to cope with fear. And I mean, we're both still here. When it comes to deployment for me, I had one close call in the 10 months I was in Afghanistan. And that close call was a mortar round that fell within a stone's throw. But they teach you how to be able to avoid that. And it's literally just hit the ground. Hit the ground and just wait for the smoke to clear and make sure they don't re-engage. Like, they teach you how to overcome this stuff. And as long as you're not a turd and you pay attention, there's really no.
Yeah. So I think that's an important thing too, right? Like we were just talking about before we started recording this, about the deaths in Chicago. Like, there were about 9,000 deaths in Chicago from 2001 to 2016. 9,000 homicide-related deaths, not like anything else. That's just pure homicide. And I mean, I hear a lot of people use these statistics as an argument, but it's true. Like, you're more likely to go to Chicago and have something happen to you than you are to go to Afghanistan or Iraq and have something happen to you. And that's just like based on statistic numbers. The only difference is, and you hit on this, is that you're trained to handle those situations as being in the military. So it's completely different when you're trained to handle those situations and you like know what's going to happen, as opposed to just showing up to a place and I think that this is like a super controversial thing. Like, a lot of people get really mad when you compare these statistics, especially people from Chicago. But like, those are statistical numbers that you can look up on any. I mean, that's from Forbes, but the FBI web database has the same numbers. So
well,
like,
and you brought up a really good point too, Rose, is when you're on deployment, you're fighting a known enemy.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So we know that the ISIS and Taliban are our enemies. They're the ones who are targeting us. We have people who specifically look for them day in and day out. And then to continue the controversy, if you're out in the street somewhere, you don't know who's concealed carrying an illegal weapon to try and take you out because you happen to go to your kid's school. As horrible as those things are, like that, those exist. At least when you're downrange, you have a known enemy versus an unknown.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, obviously I haven't deployed, right? So like, me weighing in on this subject of that kind of stuff is, I mean, that gets a lot of people riled up in as of itself. But like, just because I haven't done it doesn't mean that I haven't trained for it or I don't know what goes on down there, right? Like, I'm not oblivious to things that I can read about online. I don't have to necessarily be there to understand what happens. So
Span's boiling over right now.
Yeah,
You
go
can
ahead.
see it
Go
in
ahead.
his face.
Your comment just lends to the topic itself, right? We're talking about joining the Army and dying. And if you join the Army and you don't deploy and you don't die, like that's what it's all about, right?
Right.
I don't want to die. So there are so many statistics, there are so many facts out there that when I first joined the Army in 2000, we weren't at war, and the number one killer was traffic accidents. How many?
Pretty sure that still holds true. Like,
yeah, it's exactly that. That's my point. That's my point. Is that the number one killer of soldiers is not combat. It's traffic accidents, and I don't know the numbers on other accidents, but I'm pretty sure accidents as a whole is right up there, with combat related death. So it's just, I think we've crushed it, right? Could you join the Army and die? Yes. Is it more likely that you're going to do that in the Army than any other profession? No.
Right. Yep. So let's go on to the next one. And I think that I don't know how many times you guys have heard this, but I've heard it a lot. And I'm talking to some of my other recruiter buddies, like in other areas, not just in Michigan, is that infantry is the only job the Army has. So no matter what job you pick, you're going to be an infantryman in the Army. And you guys can take this one away. I'll let you go.
But I think it's pretty easy. I've had 4 jobs since I've been in the Army, and not a single one of them have been infantry. So that's just too simple. Doing
those jobs, did you do infantry type work because you're in the Army?
Yes.
Okay. And is that all that you did?
Not even close.
Right. What else did you do?
So I started out as a combat engineer, which I did almost nothing related to combat engineer. I did almost all truck driver related tasks. I was then a truck driver, and I did minute truck driving things. I did more heavy equipment related and construction related tasks because I supported the concrete asphalt operations down at Fort Leonard Wood. And then I became an MP. And it wasn't until I became a military police officer that I really started to do my job. However, the MP Corps is very unique. Everyone thinks military police officer, like civilian cop. I'm going to write speeding tickets. I'm going to respond to calls. I'm going to chase bad guys. That's one of 5 functions that police officers do. So while I was a military police officer, I performed more closely related functions to corrections officers. And then throughout all of those jobs, of course, there's field time where you do your infantry tactics, your combat tactics. Then there's also your supply. There's your admin. So it's, you're a complete soldier no matter what your MOS is.
Yeah, so I think that I'm like a very small portion of the Army population, right? Like I make a joke with everybody. I spent my entire career in strategic sites, meaning that I'm not out in the field doing those crazy things. And that's not by a choice. That's just the way that my career has worked out. I've tried going to tactical sites and tried doing that kind of stuff. And what I mean by strategic sites is like, so I've spent my entire career with the NSA. And that's not out doing the maneuver, the schemes and stuff like that with the infantry guys. And my MOS has a portion of that. we can do things like that if we want to. And I've tried to do it. But now I'm old, like I'm a little bit older, got a family and stuff like that. So going out to the field and doing that kind of stuff doesn't really appeal to me anymore. But when I was younger, I definitely tried. I tried to go to Washington, up to Fort Lewis. I tried to go to Fort Campbell. I tried to go to all those places, and the Army was like, no, we need people in Colorado, in Hawaii. And I was like, oh man, that really sucks. Terrible. But, I haven't spent any time in the field. I've spent very little time doing maneuver stuff outside of like training, because obviously everybody trains on that stuff. But going to the field to do it for 3-4 days, no, never. Even one day we spend like a 8-hour session out in the field doing things that are related to like skill level 1 combat stuff. And then the rest of it, we don't do anything with it. So, and I know that I'm a very, very small portion of that, but just because everybody's going to be trained in how to handle themselves, right? In those situations that we talked about earlier, but that's not all that you're going to do. But for the most part, you're going to do the job that you're trained to do. So.
See, and so I'll actually skirt the line more so towards leaning towards that infantry piece, right? To kind of play devil's advocate to this whole conversation is, yes, we're all assigned specific MOSs. Like, so me specifically, I work on the computer, mostly with NGA, FBI, CIA, and stuff like that, especially downrange. Because I do geospatial intelligence imagery analyst. So it's kind of a long title, but essentially I work with pictures. But in our creed, so we have an intelligence creed. And the very first line is, I'm a soldier first, but an intelligence professional second to none. So with being a soldier first, at the end of the day, if the enemy is storming the base, I need to know how to shoot, move, and communicate with my team.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, Lord only knows what happens if they get through the special forces guys, the Rangers, and it's left to me to pick up my weapon and have to fight off the enemy. But I would rather have that training opportunity, that I know what I'm going to have, what I'm capable of doing, and knowing the proper steps and procedures, to be able to defend myself if that was to ever come to fruition, right? To keep my soldiers safe more so than keep myself safe. So I love, like, for me, I was very lucky. I was out in Fort Bragg in my last duty station, and they're a force comm unit, which means forces command. And they're very oriented towards infantry. We support directly with the parachute infantry and the airborne infantry and stuff like that. So we worked a lot with the 82nd Airborne, and a lot of the, what is it called? The SOCOM, when I was out in Korea, we worked a lot with them. So we were used to doing and working with those field problems, we call them, trying to build scenarios and help them with scenarios. Because not only for my job is it better for being able to identify who the enemy is, because I know our TTPs. So I know the steps that we would take when we're going to storm an objective. It allows me, to see, like, oh, those are friendly forces moving that way, as opposed to being completely in the dark. And again, that's just raising your level of awareness, and being able to control where I put my fear, because I am trained and I know what to do when it comes to, if that was ever a thing. But at any point, have I ever considered myself infantry? No, I'm an infantry support job.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, everybody has a little bit different experiences. But one thing I can tell you is that I know, like, where a lot of where that misconception really comes from. And that's from Vietnam time.
Right.
I mean, like, that's a pure and simple Vietnam era stigma that has stuck with the Army forever.
Well, the attrition warfare.
Yeah. So I think that, the Army's changed tenfold in the 12 years that I've been in. And I mean, like, so while I love the Vietnam vets, I absolutely appreciate everything that they did. Like they just served in a completely different time. And like they just have different experiences. And I think that we just like telling that story, I don't know if it's good or bad, you know, like, yeah, their stories are great, but like oh, sorry, my kid's trying to save me from rambling. But yeah, like their stories are great, but it's not helpful to the Army now, you know? So, and that's just how I feel. I don't know if you guys feel the same way or not.
So the Army, between each and every war, the Army perpetuates its own cycle, right? We use what we like to call as lessons learned, right? So if you go all the way back to like World War II, we fought literal trench warfare,
Yeah.
right? So it was just how many people do you have versus how many people do I have? The most numbers wins, but there's a lot of casualties on both sides. Winners usually take the most casualties, right? Then you go to the Vietnam War, where you're more doing jungle tactics. So you're breaking up into smaller teams, but they're still quite large. You're using a lot more explosives and stuff like that. And again, it's no longer as much attrition warfare. So attrition warfare is numbers versus numbers as opposed to tactics versus tactics.
Right.
And that's where we started to perpetuate our cycle towards like the technology leaps, towards using explosives, not having so many people up on that front line. And now we're at the position where literally we kill the bad guys while we're still in the United States. We don't even need to be in the same country.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I was just trying to say like the whole Vietnam vet thing it's great. I love it. But it's definitely not the way the Army operates anymore. Like you said, we're doing our job from our living room. Not really from our living room, but I mean,
doing it in my basement.
Yeah, right now we are, but I'm talking like, you know, pretty much you walk out of your front porch, go to work, and then you're doing your job. So, Army's changed drastically since I've been in, and especially like 100 times over since Vietnam, since certain spans started serving. All right. So what about the one where people tell, like, I can't tell you how many times I hear this, and I think it's pretty common in this area to hear this one, is that people who are in the Army are uneducated. What do you guys think about that one? I could talk about that one for a little while, so I'll let you guys go. Not all at once, guys.
Go ahead, Span.
Obviously, everyone thinks that the Army is like the last chance. I couldn't make anything of myself, so, you know, I joined the Army. Or I was a troublemaker, and the judge said, join the Army or go to jail. None of that stuff's true. The Army has gotten smarter and smarter in the time that I've been in. So when I first joined, a college degree meant that you could easily make command sergeant major. Now it means that you might make sergeant first class. Obviously, there are some other things that, you know, that factor into that, but it just, you know, a bachelor's degree is just not as valuable as it used to be. And that's because there are so many people in the Army that have one. So this goes to, that's the simple answer to, we're far from uneducated. Yeah. Especially in the reserves. Let me talk about the reserves. So in the reserves, you have teachers, you have construction workers, police officers, nurses, doctors. These are all people that work in your community with secondary education. That's what it's called, secondary or post-secondary. I mean, anyways, college. These are all people that have college degrees that are in the Army. So, I mean,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not.
So I think that a lot of our stories is a lot of, at least my story, is because I treated the Army like it was a last chance. When really in reality it should have been my first option, right? Like I was gonna go to college, and then I was gonna do what? I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what the heck I was gonna do. And I mean, ultimately I ended up finding my way to this, but to say that a lot of people say that we're uneducated and that your kid is too smart. Some of the smartest people I've ever met have been in the military, and that's any branch across the board. Like I met some crazy smart people, and it's not a mistake that they take military personnel and they put them within the NSA, or they put them within these other organizations across the intelligence agencies. It's not because they're stupid. Like the most brilliant minds come out of the National Security Agency. Some of the most brilliant minds come out of the National Security Agency, talking about like deciphering and decrypting and doing a bunch of like code breaking and whatever, anything else that you could think of. These people are generally military personnel. And that's just the truth. Or if they're not currently, they were in the military. So like people that we depend on for our national security in cyberspace, that we depend on for our national security across the globe, those are the people that are in the military. And they're not dummies. I promise you, I've worked with a lot of them. Definitely not dumb people. So to say that we're uneducated that's just wrong. So.
Well, if you want to talk about too, the level of education, why would you get college credits for going through military training?
Yeah, right.
For free. Something that you're paid to go to. Your housing's free, your food's free. They pay for your hotel room, whatever, when you go out to these trainings, but you still get college credits applied.
Yeah.
Why would the education institution even allow that to be a thing if what we're teaching isn't some college level equivalent course?
Yep.
Not to mention, like, if you have a weapon or you're in charge of a team forward deployed, literally like face-to-face fighting the enemy, do you want somebody who's uneducated to be leading that team?
Right. Yeah, it's just I don't get that one, and I don't understand where it comes from. And I think that a lot of that is just that's a parent thing, man. I'm gonna be real with you. I hear that from parents all the time. They think that their kid's too smart or their kid's too bright. It's not. I don't really hear that too much from the kids, from the high school people that we talk to. I don't think that they really think that we're dumb, or that people that join the military are dumb. I think that that's the parents push that on. I think that we get that more from parents. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think you're right. I think that lends right to the previous stigma of that we
Vietnam
talked
vets.
about. It's an era thing. Because you're right. I haven't heard too many of the high school kids, talk about that, but I have heard a lot of parents talk about that, and that would. So I think you're right.
yeah, I think that and I mean, like, I got 100. I talked about this in the previous episode. I got 110 college credits at Arizona State for the training that I've got in the Army. Like 110 credits. That's crazy. So why would, for military level training? So like obviously the military is teaching and doing something right, because they don't just give away 110 college credits because they feel like it. That's a lot of money. And at like for a university to say, yeah, you have 110 credits with us now, that's I don't even know how much money to give somebody at $1,500.
But that's also not to say I'm sorry. That's also
No,
not
that's
to
okay.
say that there's some like silly individuals who make, for lack of a better word, stupid decisions.
Oh, right. That's anywhere in society. Like
Right.
you could go down the road to your local Walmart and you find, but that's
But what news travels though?
yeah, exactly. Um,
Bad news always travels, not the educated, like the Sergeant Rose types going after his bachelor's in just 2 years. That's not going to travel as quickly as, this active duty soldier um, took a lug nut off his car and went off a bridge. You know what I mean?
right. And I think that a lot of that has to lend to just decision making on a personal level. Anyways, a lot of people that you hear about being uneducated or coming out of the military with no education, or that's just because these are people that made a choice, and they made the choice to not pursue all of the avenues that were given to them and take full advantage of the benefits that were given to them. Um, and that's how I feel about the whole education thing. There's no reason that anybody should ever come out of the military service or their time after military without having a college degree. There's really no reason to not have that at least. Plus, you have work experience, so like that's how I feel, right? Obviously, there's some people that might not be able to do that for whatever reason, but like at the end of the day, I think that everybody's provided the same benefits, everybody's provided the same opportunity, and there's really no reason that they shouldn't use those to the fullest extent that they have or that they're able to. So
Or be able to get their degree immediately after.
right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a little bit of time after, if not, maybe 4 years. Maybe you didn't do any college when you were in the military because you were more focused on your career. Well, they still give you the GI Bill benefits as long as you qualify for it and you made the good decisions.
But it's
So
still not true.
what's that?
Regardless
We
of the
need a
job you
radical
get.
button.
Regardless of the job that you get, though, you're still going to get college credits.
No, yeah, but that's not, yeah. So that's true. But I'm saying like they didn't pursue any other college, like they didn't do anything. So then they still had their GI Bill benefits that they could take and pursue a college education. And maybe they don't need a college education. I mean, there's plenty of people that make it super far with just military service. I use this example a lot, but I think it's probably because I'm pretty proud of it. My father-in-law did 12 years in the military, and he's now a warden with no college education. So like that's just a hard worker that knew what he wanted to do, and he didn't go to college. He did 12 years it was actually in the Marines, and just knew what he wanted to do, worked hard to get there, used his Marine experience and kind of, I guess, uh, leaned on that, and he got all the way to the top of now he's a warden at Carson City in Michigan. So like uneducated I don't think that that's ever been true. I think that that's an era thing, like we said. So we'll get off of that one. I think that we went a little bit too far. So and I mean this will kind of lend this one's going to be the most controversial one that we talk about, because everybody has their opinions, and this one's going to piss some people off. So there's a lot of homeless vets that get out, and that for whatever reason, so why are there so many homeless vets? And I mean, not all these homeless vets are Army veterans, but so what do you guys have to say when somebody talks about the homeless rate of veterans?
Go ahead, Summer Pledge.
Okay, so actually, this is something that is very personal to me, right? So to bring it up first and foremost is that the Veterans Assistance as well as ACS, Army Community Service, they both have programs available to set up any person who gets out of the Army and falls on hard times to get housing. Like they have that available to them to get them into temporary housing, to be able to get them a job, and they work with them specifically. Teams of people that literally help you get back on your feet. The problem with homelessness, especially panhandling, so like putting the cup out and asking people for money, is a super simple job. I know that from not firsthand experience, but my brother, who has often said that he's a veteran, he also was married several different times with several different kids. But my brother's never been married, never had kids, and he couldn't serve if he wanted to. The unfortunate part about that is that people in that situation are trying to develop the most sympathy possible, and being a veteran of, whether it's the war on terrorism or Vietnam or whatever the case may be, warrants a lot of sympathy from the general public, as people generally have a very high respect for any person who served our nation to try and preserve our freedoms. Is that somebody who's just trying to be highly creative? Or is it somebody who's legitimately a vet, and then you can just turn them to a specific number to talk to the veterans assistants, to get them housing, to get them food, to get them, beds and stuff like that for them and their family, because those programs exist.
Yeah, so I think that, but I mean, so there are a lot of homeless vets. I mean, that's just, but why? What constitutes a vet? Right? Like, what do you consider to be a veteran? Is it somebody that did their time at basic training and then they made a bad decision, or they started using drugs, or they became an alcoholic, or they got 3, 4, 5 DUIs while they were just making terrible decisions, and then they got chaptered out? Are they still a vet? Well, technically, yes, by the numbers, right? So like a lot of these people made stupid decisions while they were in. And then they end up getting out with no benefits, because why would the Army give somebody benefits that can't do the right thing when they're in for 3 years? Like, all you have to do is just do the right thing, right? 3 years, do your 3 years, get out, you have the full benefits, and then and it's super hard to cut off somebody's benefits to begin with. So they had to do something really messed up, and be really messed up to get kicked out that way. Are there some people that fall on hard times that were vets? Of course there are. That's a real thing, like that, and that's an unfortunate thing. But that goes back to contacting the right people to get the assistance that you need, because we've put so much money into helping this problem, and that people don't realize that it's there, and they don't take full advantage of it. So go ahead, sir, and Span.
What do you guys, man?
You got a lot of got this look on your face like I got a lot to say about this one.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about all the things you guys talked about, but if the homeless veteran population is what you're using as your reason for not joining the Army, you're blowing smoke up, the tailpipe, because what does a homeless vet have to do with you serving your country? Are you so concerned about your future ending and you being homeless that you can't see everything else that's in front of you? So I think that it's a topic that you could talk about all day. Are there problems with our Veterans Affairs programs and systems? And sure, of course. Are there people out there that didn't get benefits that they should have gotten? Of course. But at the same time, I mean, that's anything, anywhere. So if that's really what you're coming up with as to why you don't want to serve, you're lying to yourself as well as me. So.
Yeah.
Well, is there a program like Veterans Affairs for working for fast food places?
So here's my experience. I had when I was a supervisor at a security company, I had a veteran that was using the VA, and they helped get him the job. They actually were helping him get into college and continue his education so that he could be a successful member of society. Yes, who knows what programs are out there. There are so many programs out there that I can't tell you all of the programs.
Right, but so he was. I guess the simple answer to your question, Drew, is no. There's not. Like, you know, there's tons of programs out there to help veterans get back on their feet. I mean, there's tons of people, but when you're working as a civilian, and you get laid off or you lose your job or something happens like right now, where who knows how many of the people that are currently laid off are going to end up going back to work. You know, is there going to be something out there to help these people get back on their feet outside of the federal government giving them a stimulus check?
Or unemployment.
No, there's
Those
not.
who qualify for it.
Yeah, no, there's not. There's nothing out there that is going to help anybody that is going through a hard time like there is with veterans. And I mean, a lot of the people either don't reach out to get help, don't know. That's a big thing too, is just, people don't know that those programs are available, or they're not really vets, or they were messed up, like they did some pretty messed up stuff and they don't qualify for any of those programs anymore, but they're still technically
dishonorable
vets,
discharge.
So like, yeah, exactly. So like there's 4 different brackets that you could put people in, and I'm willing to bet that a good majority of them are in the last one that I talked about. The people that did the right thing, they served their country honorably, they did all of this stuff, and they did their time, and then they just happen to fall on hard times when they get out because for whatever reason they don't adjust well, or they can't find a job right away, or whatever. There's programs out there to help them. And as long as you do take all the steps that you had to take while you were in, then you're going to qualify for those programs. And that's just like, nowhere else can you get that. So, I didn't really write anything else down. Those were the big ones that I heard. What else do you guys have? Do you guys have anything else that you hear pretty regularly, or?
No. So for me, those are probably the biggest ones. Or the other biggest, I guess, identifier for people not wanting to serve is that they want to do college versus the military, which we covered in the first podcast that we recorded.
Yep.
And we covered it a lot here too. So.
Yeah. The last 2 that I can think of right now would be what Sergeant Pfeiffer already touched on a little bit, is the mental health. Everyone that joins the Army comes back different. I could tell you
100%.
After I joined the carpentry union, after I became a carpenter's apprentice, guess what? I was different. Probably quite a bit different.
But that's growth, right? Like, everybody that joins the military is going to come back different because you're growing and you're becoming a different person, a better version of yourself, right?
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
Yeah, you're not going to be, sorry, mom and dad, you're going to lose little Johnny for your baby boy or baby girl or whatever. They're going to change. They're going to grow up. They're going to become adults. You can't foster their childhood and keep it contained in a bottle forever. Like, these people, these kids have to become adults. And where's the best place for them to do that? In the military. Like, we take kids from high school and we turn them into adults. We help them grow. We help them. So yeah, are they going to come back different? Sure. Are there cases where people come back with PTSD, or there's cases where people come back? Yes, of course there are. Is that a risk of the job profession that we choose? Of course it is.
That's a super controversial thing too. There's people who don't qualify for the military service because they have PTSD from their childhood.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a whole different boat, right? Like,
But I think it lends to what you were saying, is that just because you join the Army doesn't mean you're going to get PTSD. You can actually not be qualified prior to service because you can get PTSD from other things.
Yeah,
PTSD isn't a Army or a military related problem.
Right.
We are just now the society is just now as a whole starting to understand that it better. And I can tell you that I don't think there's any other organization in the United States that handles or has care programs for PTSD. So, I mean, if you're going to be one of those people that's more susceptible to it, because everyone's susceptible to it, but some of us just take longer to bounce back from it. And if you're one of those people, there's no better place to be than in an organization that has a pretty good understanding on how to help individuals recover from that injury.
Right. Yeah. So actually, I do have one more. I just thought of this. I was talking to a mom a little while ago at an event, and she asked me, and she was like, "So are you concerned like with alcoholism in the military? What do you guys do about all the parties and all the alcohol, like all the alcoholism that goes on in the military?" And I'm like, "Have you stepped foot on a college campus? Like, have you ever been to a college like Michigan State on a Friday night? Have you ever seen what that looks like? Because I guarantee you, it's a lot more crazy. So like,
they rank colleges based off of what kind of top party college it is.
Yeah, exactly. But she was like, but I kind of want my kid to go to college, and I was like, oh, okay, so you're worried about alcoholism in the military, but you're down to send your kid to college. Like, what is? I don't get it. The military is not just it's like its own. I don't even know. It's like a thing that people like to report on based on, the negative stuff that happens inside of it.
One story that they heard, my brother, he, served for 3 years and came back and now he's an alcoholic.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it. I didn't quite understand her question, but.
What college campus has someone who's moderately responsible that goes and checks on them at least 5 times a week?
I could tell you probably 0.
2.
Do the teachers go check on them? Like on the weekends and stuff? If something happens, you could just call your teacher while you're at college and be like, hey, I need can someone come pick me up? I had a little bit too much to drink. I can't drive.
I mean, I'm sure there are some teachers out there. Like, I don't want to discredit the teachers because
right.
There probably are some teachers out there that genuinely care about their students, and probably would go that extra step, but they're few and far between,
But in the military service, like, speaking from my own personal experience, if anything ever happened to me where I got way too drunk and I needed a ride back home, I could call, whether it was my first line supervisor, second line, first sergeant, my commander. Like, I have 8 different numbers of people that I can call that are just in my chain of command, not friends, people who are morally obligated to take care of me, to make sure that I show up to work on Monday at 5 o'clock in the morning.
But also to lend to what I think you were originally trying to get at is there's no one going through college dorms to ensure that they have no more than 6 beers in their refrigerator. There's no one showing up Saturday night at midnight to make sure that you guys aren't throwing a giant rager and, destroying a building. Staff duty coming by to make sure that the place is locked up, that people aren't passed out on front lawns and setting cars on fire and whatever else that happens. Now, obviously, the other side of that coin is it's not a perfect system. Stuff does happen. But the point is that, we have things in place to help combat that, which, we're talking about the college campus and alcoholism. That brings me to another one that I've heard quite a bit, and that's this one's probably going to take the cake for controversy, and that is sexual assault and sexual harassment. I've had quite a few individuals be like, "Oh, I don't want to join because I don't want to take the chance of being raped." And it's like, do you go to a major university? Not saying that you get raped for going to a major university, but
yeah, we definitely don't want to insinuate anything like that.
Well, the military has programs to limit that kind of exposures, right? So we were talking about honorable and dishonorable discharges, right? And what qualifies you as a vet. Well, if you get caught violating what we have in the military is known as SHARP, so Sexual Harassment Assault Response Prevention. It's a program that you have to go through quarterly training. So once every 3 to 4 months, you have to sit down through an hour-long class that teaches you what to do, what not to do, how to respond to an event in case one of my soldiers or friends comes back and they're acting a little bit strange, a little sullen, withdrawn, clothes are tattered and torn. Like, I know exactly how to help that individual, as well as make sure that the person who was the perpetrator is also adequately punished without taking it personally, and making sure that justice is served. And I'm just a regular Joe. I am no one of major consequence in the grand life scheme. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good, fair point, right? Like, we have some really, really, and I mean, it's only gotten better. Back when I first joined, SHARP was not even close to what it is now. And it's only gotten better, and only our response to what has been going on. And not only that, but we instituted, the battle buddy systems, or warrior companions, or whatever they call them now. We've instituted those to keep people safe. Nobody else does stuff like that. As far as, we force people, like, we tell them, hey, you have to have somebody with you at all times, because we don't want this to happen to you.
Well, I think my favorite part about the new, favorite's probably a really terrible way to say it. One of the things that I really like about what the Army's done is they started training bystanders, right? Like, and then also holding them responsible for situations, so that, not only do they train them like, hey, listen, this is what you should be looking for, and this is when you should intervene, and here's some ways to do it. Oh, and by the way, if you don't, you can be held responsible. So yeah. I don't know. Right. That's what I really like about the changes that I've seen since I've been in. So
yeah, that's a really good one. And I mean, I don't want to. I'm kind of gonna avoid talking about the colleges. Because really the military, like we talked about earlier, the military is just its own population, and we have everything. It's its own support system. Basically, you could take us out of the entire U.S. population, and it operates almost the exact same. We have people that work in hospitals. We have people that do all of this stuff. And unfortunately, the unfortunate part of that is that you're always going to have bad apples. And that's with anything in society and in life. There's always going to be people that do bad things and don't do the right things and take advantage of people and do all of this stuff. And it's no less, it's no more, and it's no less than anywhere else than it is in the military. It's just an over-reported fact in the military. And I think that our over-reporting, and not even our reporting numbers, is because of the confidence in the system that we've developed. There's more people that are likely to report it because we've developed such a good system for it. It wasn't great in 2012, 2008 when I came in, but over time, the numbers we've had more people report it. And I think that's a contributing factor to that is how well we've handled it, and how comfortable people are starting to get, and how comfortable they are with the discipline and what's going to happen to the person that committed it. I think that sexual assault, especially sexual harassment, is underreported on universities and in population in general, because people aren't comfortable with what they think is going to happen to that person that is committing it, and they're afraid of reprisal. They don't want something to happen to them, and that's my take on it, and that's what I think. That's my opinion. Obviously, that may not be true, but that's just that's what I think is a contributing factor to why there's so many more reported cases of sexual assault or sexual harassment in the military than there are in general populations. So
I think that might be a good topic to cover like next week. We'll do some background research on Sharp.
yeah, I mean, that one's a little touchy. I like you said, I think that's probably the most controversial one. I mean, obviously people have had that stuff happen to them in the military, and I've talked to a couple people that are like, hey, what if I had this happen to me and now I'm not interested in serving? I'm like, I'm sorry but how did you respond to it? Did you report it? Or did it just happen and you let it go? I don't really ask them that. I'm just like, hey, I'm sorry that happened to you. I don't, I won't ask. I don't really know how. That's a very touchy subject for me, and I get kind of a little bit uncomfortable.
Reporting has gone up too, as like the stigma has gone down about, hey, if you report this, then you're going to get in trouble, blah blah blah. Like
right.
When that was a thing, when that was a stigma, and people were afraid of their future careers because they admitted to having something happen to them that was beyond their control. As that went away, reporting skyrocketed.
Yep.
And now that's why there was an increase of the reports, was because now these people felt like they can actually let it out and get the mental help as well as the physical help that they needed, that was government funded, to be able to take care of them and continue their career. And that's why those numbers spiked for a couple years in a row, and then now it's been on a slow, steady decline. And of course it's going to get crazy media coverage because we're talking about a government agency. So why wouldn't they spin that?
Yeah. Well, I think that we will probably end it on that. I can. Everyone's kids are kind of getting restless, and I don't want to keep us, here. Get to our families and stuff. This is a little bit longer episode, so. But again, I'm just going to close it the same way that I closed it last week. If you guys want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on YouTube, on our Instagrams. I'm probably going to put our Instagrams and Facebooks on the opener. So if you want to do that, and I'll have a slide at the end too, after we close this, so that you guys can reach out, or goarmy.com, search us on Facebook, search us on Instagram, whatever you guys want to do. Any way to get a hold of us or a recruiter in your area, those are the best ways to get a hold of us. So I think that next episode will be on Thursday, so we'll have that published out on Thursday. So I don't really know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll come up with a really good subject. So all right, guys, but stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside. And I hope that everybody tunes in on Thursday. We'll see you guys
Later.